Hey guys, tonight we step into the enchanting realm of Greek mythology to immerse ourselves in the lush and intoxicating world of Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, and ecstasy. Imagine a world where every grapevine whispers tales of divine mischief, and every cup of wine carries not just a hint of inebriation, but a passport into a realm teeming with life and chaos. As you picture this, you probably won't survive this without a smirk or an eye roll. We are talking about Dionysus, after all. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself at the cusp of Dionysus' enchanting domain, where vines rise like sentient creatures, draping the landscape with a canopy of emerald leaves and clusters of grapes so deep in hue you'd think they were soaked in twilight. The air hums with the aroma of ripening fruit, promising not just nourishment, but revelry. It's a world where the mundane and the miraculous fuse, a place where Dionysus walks amidst the mortals, although entirely indifferent to their rigid routine. In your mind's eye, you trail Dionysus as he sways through the grove, an aura of intoxicating laughter lingering in his wake. His very presence blurs the line between ecstasy and confusion, mirroring a carefully orchestrated chaos. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was originally a foreign deity adopted into the Greek pantheon, or if he sprouted from their own soil, but what remains undeniable is his cultural footprint, imprinted like a grape stomper's stain. Now, here's a quirky tidbit to swirl around. Did you know that Dionysus wasn't just all about the booze? Among his lesser-known responsibilities, he was also a protector of those who dare to defy conventional norms and challenge societal expectations. So if you've ever been told you're too independent or eccentric, perhaps Dionysus is your spiritual patron. As you picture this, notice how the presence of Dionysus paradoxically invites both liberation and unpredictability. It's said that his festivals were a playground for identity and transformation, frolicking events where you could lose yourself to find yourself again. Imagine a space where a simple sip of wine becomes an elixir, unraveling your guarded thoughts and accentuating the tapestry of life's dualities. You meander deeper into the lore, where Dionysus's gatherings were more than mere parties. They were a deliberate departure from the mundane, akin to slipping into an artist's surreal masterpiece where rules unfurl and spontaneity reigns. There's a delicious contradiction at play. Freedom entwined with chaos, much like letting your hair down only to find it tangled in mischief the next morning. But lest we begin extolling just the rosy-hued facets of Dionysus's world, keep in mind the ever-present whip of consequence. His indulgence wasn't about reckless abandon. It was an exploration of the human condition. With every goblet raised came a reflection of life's dual nature. It was a reminder that joy and madness aren't always separate entities. Sometimes they're locked in an eternal, intoxicating dance. Now, whether you are raising an actual goblet yourself or musing through the options of tonight's varietal, remember this rich history and legacy that enhances your next sip. Engage with this ancient orchestra, a symphony composed of laughter, unbridled dance, and the hidden longing to touch the divine. It's as if Dionysus built a bridge between the mortal and the mystical. Just a reminder, these escapades often ended with a rather, let's say, enlightening hangover, one where the headache isn't merely at the temples but etched in the heavens. If you glance towards historical records, you'd find that Dionysus once appeared in the midst of a grand procession, seated on a chariot led by panthers, yes, actual panthers. Ancient accounts suggest that these beasts pulled his chariot with a graceful ferocity, symbolizing untamed passion and sensual savagery. Now, ancient Greeks knew how to make an entrance. Picture the scene with a modern twist. It's like arriving at a party in a sleek convertible but with a wild feline panache. This lush world didn't just revolve around Dionysus indulging himself. His very essence cultivated a narrative, an ever-evolving myth where each chapter was etched into the tapestry of Greek mythology. And here is the academic humdinger. While some texts paint him as a benevolent deity, Others emphasize the darker turn his influence could unleash, permitting frenzy, inviting madness when unrestrained, discarding convention. Intriguingly, Dionysus wasn't merely about celebrating life's zenith, but understanding its lows in equal measure. The myths swirling around him speak of a god who experienced the full spectrum of emotion, exultation to despair, all while challenging the status quo. Imagine a myth that taught you to fear imbalance and embrace transition, leads you to question where the boundary between pleasure and peril truly lies. As you luxuriate in this lush vineyard of mythology, appreciate the dual vine of Dionysus's essence, liberation and lunacy, twisted like a double helix, inseparably entwined. His presence articulated a lesson as ancient as time itself, that life, much like a finely aged wine, is meant to be savored in its entirety, the sweet and the sharp, the light and the shadow. So as your mind wanders within Dionysus's world, allow his stories to ripple through your thoughts like a crimson tide, ushering you towards harmony with the self and the sublime. What a dance that could be, a celebration in the recess of your mind, where wine is for the soul, what laughter is for the heart, an elixir of existence. Imagine the smooth, aromatic scent of rich red wine weaving through your senses, drawing you deeper into the lush and intoxicating realm of Dionysus. It is a world brimming with vibrant celebrations, where the air is alive with the melody of flutes and the rhythmic stomp of dance. As you delve deeper into this vivid tapestry, you find that at the heart of all this revelry and chaos is a tale that begins not with grandeur, but with a secret whispered between the heavens and the earth. Your journey starts in the time before the time anyone cared how much they drank, in the hidden intricacies of Dionysus's origin. Picture yourself eavesdropping in a corner of ancient Thebes. Yes, Thebes, not the nightclub in Las Vegas, as a clandestine affair unfolds. Here, we meet Semele, a mortal woman of unmatched beauty, who captivates Zeus himself, the king of the Greek gods. Sneaky Zeus, known for his rather eventful romantic resume, falls for Semele in a love story that's part myth, part soap opera. Historians still argue whether this affair was purely consensual or tinged with divine persuasion, but one could say Zeus had quite the way with lightning bolts and charm. In true dramatic fashion, Semele becomes pregnant with Zeus's child. Suspense builds as Hera, Zeus's wife of the godly kingdom, catches wind of the affair. Fueled by sorrow and perhaps a bit of Athena-fueled gossip, Hera devises a cunning plan to teach Semele, and by extension Zeus, a lesson not so easily forgotten. Slipping into disguise, the manipulative queen plants seeds of doubt in Semele's mind, suggesting that a gal who claims to be loved by Zeus should demand proof of his divine glory. And demand? Semele does. You can almost see the eye roll from Zeus as he reluctantly agrees, bound by a godly promise, his equivalent of signing a contract with a mischievous deity. When he reveals himself in all his thundering, electrifying majesty, the human world and divine collide tragically as Semele is overwhelmed by the radiance. It's like trying to hug the sun. Beautiful, but boy does it sting. In this fiery demise, Zeus acts quickly to save their unborn child, performing an impromptu operation that would leave even modern surgeons gaping, zipping the young Dionysus into his own thigh for safekeeping. Yes, you heard it right, thigh pocket parenting. It's the latest trend in divine childcare. This peculiar entry into the world marks Dionysus as a figure straddling two realms, a half-mortal existence alongside a rich divine heritage. The half-mortal god is essentially given a thigh-up in life, carried to term within Zeus's impenetrable body. It's here that our story pauses at an ironic crossroads. Is he destined for greatness or madness? This question lingers, like a vintage wine whose flavor develops with time. Escaping the turbulent cocktail of Olympus drama, the infant Dionysus finds himself under the care of his aunt Ino and her husband Athamas, hidden away from Hera's vengeful gaze, in a mortal world unaware of the budding god among them. To maintain their safety, Dionysus is disguised as a girl. This cross-dressing infancy is perhaps the earliest recorded example of breaking gender norms, paving the way centuries before it became en vogue in Paris fashion shows. This upbringing brings Dionysus the rare experiences of walking among mortals, adopting their customs, and feeling the flesh and blood pulse of humanity. A quaint notion even by today's standards, where most divine figures prefer the comfort of the Cloud9 lifestyle. It's amidst these mortal interactions that Dionysus acquires empathy, a trait rare amongst his celestial kin. The peculiar god isn't just about wine and wacky parties, but also about understanding the fine line between ecstasy and despair, a line he dances upon like a flamboyant prima ballerina in the skies. As for fringe tidbits, legend holds that when Dionysus was still an infant, he performed his first miracle by crying, and his grandparents received a charming gift: an entire grove of grapevines sprouting up overnight. Early bloomers, indeed. While mainstream historians may chuckle at this nursery miracle, some debates include the suggestion that these tales were embellished to bolster his divine nature as the bringer of vine and vine products, essentially the world's first master sommelier. The intrigue of Dionysus's birth is as timeless as the cyclic rebirths associated with seasons, symbolic of him being the god of regeneration. Every winter dies into spring, just as Dionysus carries within him the constant cycle of being born, concealed, and reborn into divinity. These paradoxical elements frame him not just as a hedonistic deity of parties, but also as a profound character with the quickest wit on Mount Olympus. His tale is like a recipe passed down through generations, kept in a familial cookbook that's both sacred and stained with the messy splatters of laughter and tears. With each retelling, the essence of Dionysus breathes life into our understanding that amidst chaos, there lies an intricate vine of connection woven between human life and godly realms. Even scholars carefully dissect the complexities with certainty. After all, half-mortal origins involving thigh surgery aren't what you'd call historically conventional. As you mull over this curious origin story, perhaps with a glass of Dionysian vintage in hand, think of the path ahead in our exploration of his life's boisterous chapters. This part of the journey asks you to hold in your heart a thread of empathy and the thrill that accompanies the tickling unpredictability of Dionysus's narrative. Embark, my friend, and may your curiosity ferment like the finest wines as we delve deeper into the uniquely woven tale of this ecstatic god. The gods on Olympus had an uncanny knack for drama, and Dionysus was no exception. But unlike his Olympian relatives, his early life was wrapped in a cunning shroud of secrecy. Born to Zeus and the ill-fated Semele, young Dionysus's existence was a conundrum that required discretion. He wasn't precisely destined for mundane experiences, but disguising a miniature deity as an average child was no mean feat. Ever imagine disguising an elephant in a tea shop? Well, that might give you a sense of the challenge, though it's just a tad simpler without the trumpeting. Imagine, if you will, Dionysus as a child, which in itself is a wild notion. He was whisked away under the slightly indifferent care of nymphs and satyrs, entrusted with his upbringing and protection from Hera's wrathful scrutiny. The nymphs, as history would have it, were the perfect caregivers, provided the little one didn't mind lessons on the finer points of wild dance and the cultivation of grapes. And so, Dionysus was hidden in plains and valleys, places he would later turn into arenas of delight and frenzy. The young god, countenanced by such a colorful entourage, grew up among mortals like some divine game of hide-and-seek. He traversed human lands, diligently cloaked in the guise of an ordinary boy. His mentors taught him to blend in, to navigate mortal society with its quirky norms and traditions. And oh, those traditions. Ever heard of wine-related mishaps so common in joyous gatherings? Dionysus found himself learning through these merry little disasters, an experience no textbook could replicate. Still, historians argue whether these early lessons were formative or mostly just fermented. In one of history's intriguing asides, Dionysus was said to have spent time in Phrygia, under the tutelage of Rhea. Here he supposedly acquired more than a taste for revelry, but also the mysteries that would later influence his rites. It's fascinating, really, when one considers that Dionysus's adventure of hiding actually contributed to shaping religious practices. Not many can claim their time eluding detection had such cosmic consequences. Now, there's debate about whether he realized his divine spark early or stumbled upon it like a teenager finding a talent for skateboarding. Some tales insist he always knew who he was, while others prefer to paint him as a wise fool, discovering realities as he ventured into the unknown fringes of magic and mirth. But one thing's certain, Dionysus didn't corner the market on immortality, without first experiencing the transient pleasures and pains of human existence. For instance, he came across a particular Athenian penchant for theatrics, an infatuation resembling modern drama clubs. Imagine, if you will, a place that's part theater, part realm of divine dance. So much more than any mortal playhouse today. And in these meandering days, as Dionysus coursed through human experience like wine through goblets, he absorbed mortality's tender lessons. Who hasn't learned a thing or two from moments of masquerade? His time incognito lent him insights that neither pure divinity nor isolated immortality could furnish. He grasped the delicate balance between joy and sorrow, a duality that would forever define his legacy. But this mortal life came with unpredictably chaotic edges, not least from his cousin Pentheus, who closely resembled a mythological killjoy. Dionysus danced through lands that did not always welcome him with open arms. Yet he was resilient, adapting to every hardship thrown his way, with the light-hearted tenacity only a mischievous future god could muster. After all, one might say he elevated hide-and-seek into both a sport and an art, somewhat like the underappreciated Olympics of his adolescence. There's an often repeated story of how Dionysus, during his escapades, was mistaken for a mortal and affronted by unthinking villagers. This happened in many variations, like that time mortals preferred he not crash their sober gatherings. But times change, and frankly, so do perspectives. One might wonder how his consort with repressed humanity prepared him for divine leadership and tales of revelry. As philosophers still muse over existential equations, historians remain fixated on whether the god ever considered a stint as the patron of moderation instead. Though, knowing Dionysus, the concept of moderation might have elicited more laughter than consideration. Yet his charm led even the most skeptical souls to reconsider their stance on wine's hospitable embrace. Thus, Dionysus's hidden years made him a tapestry of contrasts, of wild, unharnessed energy cradled within a shell of charming faux mortality. He walked amongst the living, observing their foibles and triumphs intimately, storing these lessons for the day he dared to abandon disguises. He learned from mortals what no other deity could: empathy in chaos, compassion amidst unwieldy disorder, and the beauty of an unbridled dance under the stars. So, while the god of wine's early days involved the subtlety of hidden vines, much like those eve-spent parties concealed from watchful parents, they were foundational to his myth. Dionysus, wearing his mortal guise like an elaborate costume, gleaned the delicate art of living, one joyous glassful at a time. With the divine weaving of life's chaotic feast well strung upon his heartstrings, Dionysus strode through revelries that would define him as both god and legend, ready to imbibe and imbue the world with his intoxicating presence. Keep these moments in mind. They are the exhaled whispers on a breeze that'll carry you deeper into tales of enchantment and transformation. As you trudge along the dusty roads of ancient Greece, you can almost feel the olive-tinged breeze brushing against your cheek, whispering tales of Dionysus' storied journeys, both joyous and tinged with madness. It's a journey not simply of geography, but also of the heart, as Dionysus wanders through lands that would shape his identity as much as he shaped them. Trust me, when you think of wine and festivals, there's more complexity here than a mere toga party. Ah, Dionysus. You know, history remembers him as the god of wine and ecstatic celebrations. But those who take a closer look discover the rich tapestry of experiences that wove together his divine existence. With his birth from the immortal king of gods Zeus and mortal Semele, Dionysus carried a natural duality, effortlessly embodying the human as well as the divine. This complexity only deepened during his wanderings and endless adventures, a mixture of joy and chaos, life lessons, and let's be honest, probably more than a few hangovers. In these travels, Dionysus was more than just a youthful deity causing a ruckus. Indeed, he was a bringer of ecstasy, and quite paradoxically, the instigator of madness. Some even posit that these journeys served as a sort of divine road trip therapy for him, sorting through his supernatural issues one frothy goblet at a time. Besides, who among us hasn't needed a change of scenery when things get too existential, right? Now picture Dionysus roaming through the rugged landscapes of Phrygia and Thrace. These are regions that historians still puzzle over. Did his visit spawn ecstasy cults, or did he throw a really great housewarming party? The exact details might evade us, but what we do know paints a vivid picture of vineyards and rolling hills becoming an open stage for phenomena that transcended mortal understanding. As Dionysus wandered, he reveled in spreading his gifts, those intoxicating elixirs of emotion, to every village and forest he stumbled upon. Like an ancient opera for joy and insanity, he was a deity of the people. You get ecstasy, you get madness, everyone gets a little something. However, it's crucial to note the not-so-subtle dual existence in these wanderings. Were Dionysus's gifts for better or worse? That's a dance historians still perform around campfires of their own, debating the dichotomy of his persona. One quirky tale recounts Dionysus demonstrating his divine influence by turning a group of nosy mortals into frolicking fountain creatures, for sticking their noses where they weren't welcome. A bit harsh, maybe, but undeniably creative. Then again, when faced with continual skepticism about his prowess and identity, one can understand the urge for a bit of showmanship. There's also the fascinating snippet that during his travels, Dionysus imparted mortal wisdom through his seemingly outlandish ways. The fostering of theater could have its roots here, where drama and delirium met in harmonious union. Historians, ever thoughtful, argue whether the bard himself might owe a debt to Dionysus. Could it be that the seeds of tragedy and comedy were planted during these very escapades? You'll find your mind pondering this as you lose yourself in ripe clusters of grapes glistening under a Grecian sun, just as likely to cause tears of laughter as they are screams of existential dread. As for his entourages, those motley crews, Dionysus had a following that would put modern music festivals to shame. Satyrs and maenads, entities who understood the ebb and flow of his intoxicating charisma, joined him. Known for their raucous celebrations and wild abandon, they were the quintessential plus ones to this divine celebration of life. Imagine a never-ending road trip with your most capricious friends, where the itinerary is a symphonic chaos and roadside attractions range from the outlandish to the insightful. It wasn't all revelry and fermented grape juice, of course. In Dionysus's meanderings, madness had its place too. Inducing frenzied states in those around him, the god's presence was both a blessing and a tempest. Scholars remain engrossed in heated debates over the causes and effects. Was madness a necessary counterbalance to his benevolence, or merely an unfortunate byproduct of divine intervention? It's a question both ethereal and tangible, mirroring our own struggles with indulgence and inhibition, pleasure and prudence. But even amidst the storm of celebration and delirium, there was a lesson for those lucky, or perhaps intrepid enough, to peel back the layers. Dionysus seemed to whisper, isn't simply lived, it is experienced with gusto, every height and depth. It's found in the narratives of wine-laden joviality, interspersed with the cautionary tales of untamed madness. Whether he was gallivanting with his followers in shadowed groves, or imbuing townsfolk with an uncontrollable urge to dance beneath a full moon, it was all a vivid tapestry, a reminder of the full sensual spectrum life offers. As your journey with Dionysus unfolds, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at this god's fearless exploration of existence. His adventures weren't just a means of spreading joy and madness, but real-life enactments of human emotion distilled through divine experience. And maybe that's the real gift Dionysus offers, an invitation to wander through our own lives as if we are both the spectator and the spectacle, sipping from goblets overflowing with life's sweet and sour nectar. And perhaps, the next time you find yourself lost in a moment, whether it's the abandon of laughter or the quietude of reflection, you'll think back to Dionysus wandering those same existential roads, a fellow traveler whispering across time to embrace the paradoxes that make life beautifully, maddeningly whole. There you stand, barely on the cusp of divinity, just a half step from Olympian greatness, feeling the cool breeze of accumulated destiny against your skin. The whispers of the winds carry fragments of hymns and myths that hint at your heritage. It's the sort of cosmic irony only the gods could laugh at, to be a god walking unseen among mortals for so long. Dionysus, the god who mingles madness with wisdom in a chalice of wine, seems as much a paradox to himself as to the world he observes. There's a certain delicious, albeit dizzying, thrill in knowing that both diaphanous divinity and gritty human blood course through your veins. Yet, Here you are, on the precipice, feeling the tingle of climbing towards your ethereal birthright. The world around you still basks in the ordinary. A merchant shouting in the distance, hawking amphorae filled with olive oil. Did you know the ancients used olive oil like a moisturizer after a nice scrape of their skin? Earth's first skincare routine, brought to you by olives. A mother yells at her children by the market's edge. Some things never change, not even in myth. With a sigh carrying centuries of yearning, you begin to let the layers of your mortal mask slip away. Your skin tingles, warmed by an internal sunlight that once seemed smoldered under heaps of human experience. There's a charged moment when every sound fades, and only the rhythms of your divine pulse crescendo. Historians still argue whether this divine call came as a flash of insight or a gradual unveiling. But no spoilers. It's the metaphysical equivalent of sipping a cup of warm tea, only to realize it was ambrosia all along. In this awakening, when the veil finally lifts, you hear the world differently. The trees whisper about the stories they harbor inside their rings. Each ripple in a nearby puddle resonates with an echo from the days of creation. You feel out of place, yet perfectly timed, like elaborately planned chaos. Such is the point when you recognize how the essence of you is intertwined with the living pulse of every grapevine, every fermenting wine barrel, and dare I say, every hiccup of a drunken reveler. This might be an interesting tidbit, but did you know that some ancients actually queried grape-based oracles after consuming hallucinogenic libations? They believed they could peer into the divine through Dionysus' favorite beverage. No formal betting tickets required for these visions, just the courage to imbibe and inquire. As you, Dionysus, reacquaint yourself with your godly prowess, you probably have mixed feelings about this free-form consultation service. Still, who could fault the mortals for seeking a glimpse of what simultaneously surrounds and transcends them? As the dust of the world swirls beneath your steady footsteps, flickering like memories in your mind's eye, the tendrils of divinity pull you inexorably toward Mount Olympus. Each step you take vibrates power, akin to the thunderous prophecies of the oracles, like when they mentioned how Alexander the Great was destined to bridge east and west. Think grand, sweeping strides of destiny, not awkward clumps, though if we're being candid, there was probably at least one unfortunate stumble along the way, as embarrassment is the most human trait of all. The terrain changes underfoot, going from loamy earth, fragrant with wild flora, to the ethereal climate of celestial fields. Memories of mortal struggles and triumphs dance through your consciousness like the embers of a dying fire, flickering testimonials to a past you outgrew but never fully left behind. Is it nostalgia or relief that fills you? Perhaps both, colliding like two notes in harmonious dissonance. As your vision clears, Olympus looms ahead, its peaks piercing the heavens like a crown worn with both pride and indifference. Silhouettes of your divine family stand against the backdrop of shimmering clouds, each face carrying its own story, each deity a co-author of the fabric of the universe. And here you are, finally ready to reacquaint yourself with your divine kinship. One debated scholarly tangent arises: whether Dionysus' delayed acceptance of his divinity was an inherent part of his progression or a narrative construed by later myths to underscore his connection to humanity. Whichever stance you prefer, the truth remains that this moment signifies not just an ascension, but a reclamation. You're no longer simply the god who wandered incognito among mortals, nor the outlier of the divine sphere, nor even the constant party host with a penchant for chaos and nice wines. You stand poised to merge your dual heritage into a single, cohesive identity. Marvel at the realization rushing through you. It's akin to the cracking of the sky at dawn, shedding darkness in favor of beaming light. The duality of your nature comes together like the closing of a volume, with all its narrative complexities, now resting gently under the warm glow of conclusion. You might remember that beneath the eccentric tales and effervescent libations lies a god whose journey teaches about embracing the fullness of what we are. Perhaps it encourages the mortals, the ones who dance and falter beneath your newly sanctified gaze, to consider the hidden layers within themselves. Or perhaps it's just an epilogue, leading only to the next chapter. As you take that final step into your rightful place, surrounded by the chorus of acceptance from your Olympian brethren, the world, for just a fraction of time, holds its breath. It waits for the message of Dionysus, not just god of revelry and transformations, but the embodiment of reclaiming identity and intertwining destiny with grandeur. Now imagine yourself cast adrift on the sparkling Aegean Sea, the sun a golden orb inching itself lazily across the cloudless sky. You find yourself on a ship bobbing merrily along, the salty breeze tickling your nose while seagulls scream their insolent anthems overhead. There you are, pondering which snack to unearth from your bag when, oh look, there's a group of burly pirates heading straight for you. How thrilling! Donning menacing smiles and brandishing, let's say, less than sparkling swords, they seem rather intent on capturing anything of value, including, as it turns out, a certain young figure relaxing in the corner. These pirates, dear listener, were not the lovably ruffled type escaping in a theme park ride, but shrewder, greedier souls of history who'd probably see Treasure Island simply as an incomplete shopping list. And so, they capture Dionysus, a mortal-looking man to them, seemingly alone, his divine essence carefully veiled by his human guise. The pirates, calculating in their ambition, believe they've stumbled upon some easy plunder. Oh, if only they'd paid more heed to the old saying about things being too good to be true. It's almost like finding a $5 bill on the ground before realizing it's taped to a complicated booby trap, one involving glitter, rotten eggs, and potentially a real, live goose. Ah, the life of a pirate is a series of bad decisions punctuated by nautical wonder. Historians still argue whether these maritime no-goods were victims of their own audacity or simply lacking in education when it came to spotting divine figures in disguise. You see, Dionysus, son of Zeus and the mortal Semele, already had quite the reputation for his mischievous play with reality even before this seabound episode. But perhaps these pirates didn't keep up with gossip from Mount Olympus, which, to be fair, wasn't twirled down the grapevine with the ease of your average episode recap. The pirates eagerly imagined the clinking of coins to the rhythm of their ship's sway, loyal to the notion that they'd snagged a rich youth worth ransoming. However, the reality of gods is something entirely else. Dionysus, patient, and with a humor both mild and wild, seemed intrigued by their antics more than perturbed. Let's imagine him seated with a quiet smile, as easy and serene as a cat harboring dreams of sudden mischief. While on this ship, can you envision the slight bobbing beneath your feet, that faint sway familiar mainly to seasoned sailors and young demigods alike? Meanwhile, with eyes bright like polished obsidian, Dionysus takes in the sights, like you might when spotting an old friend in a crowd. Whatever thoughts flitted through his mind remain his own, but let's speculate with a gentle shrug and say Dionysus was a god of manifold patience, allowing the mortals to draw themselves deeper into their folly. To the pirates, however, he appeared as just another wanderer, absent-minded perhaps, as if detached from any semblance of authority. These actions led to their growing confidence, an assurance that bordered on folly. They hadn't comprehended that they were players in a story older than any saga etched by their mortal brethren. It adds a layer of humor, doesn't it? A scene straight from a slapstick comedy as these seafaring ne'er-do-wells lean into their mistake, unknowing that the winds have shifted against them. Not meteorologically speaking, but fatefully so. Now humor me with indulgence as the facts rearrange into fiction. Did you know ancient sailors once believed that dolphins were the harbingers of good luck? Quirky little sea creatures with perpetual smiles, their arrival was deemed an omen of safe passage. Curiously enough, Dionysus and these pirates share a destiny with such creatures, but not in the way one might expect. And what's next, you ask, as our tale wends its way through azure waves? Why, keep your metaphorical life vest handy. Our adventure is only beginning. This ship, these mortals, and this god are on the cusp of shifting narratives, one where mistaken identity meets divine creativity aboard rolling waves. Though our ship lacks the glamour of a luxury liner, and our ensemble crew becomes less voluntary by the fleeting moment, trust that the unfolding tale will whisk us to shores both untamed and wild. Historians may continue to ponder the deeper symbolism of Dionysus' encounter with the hapless pirates, a metaphor of divine retribution or a vivid morality tale wrapped in laughter. You and I, passengers aboard this story, will remain ever curious as to where the winds will take us next. But for now, Let's allow the tide to carry us, embracing the salty spray of adventure as the sea, much like the looming divine intervention, remains unpredictably sublime. As you sail aboard the pirate vessel, the sea breeze tickles your skin with a mix of salt and adventure. Below deck, an unlikely captive stirs, the god Dionysus himself, still an enigma concealed behind a facade of mortality. Assembling a plan, Dionysus ponders his situation with the nonchalance of someone who's seen their fair share of life's follies. The vessel sways gently, and you can't help thinking that if Poseidon had a sense of humor, he'd probably cue some dramatic thunder right about now. And then, just when you think things might follow the regular hostage script, Dionysus opts for something different. Picture a ship, but not just any ship, one that's about to undergo a metamorphosis of mythic proportions. With a flourish, Dionysus conjures magic that yawns and stretches like it's just woken from a long nap, spilling into the nooks and crannies of the wooden vessel. A tangible shift occurs, not unlike those times your smart device autocorrects a ridiculous typo, and you wonder if it might actually have a mind of its own. Suddenly, the mundane planks of the ship's deck begin to change, shooting tendrils of rich green life in every direction. Vines twist and intertwine, threading themselves into the very fabric of the ship's structure. Leaves unfurl, basking in the sunlight that now streams from, well, nowhere in particular. Yes, a pirate ship turning into a leafy wonderland isn't in the standard seafaring manual. It's more like a Pinterest project gone wildly off-script. Let's take a moment to step back into historical reality, shall we? Historians still argue whether Dionysus's influences on early Greek villages included such arboreal artistry. Some suggest these tales symbolize the infusion of agriculture into society, boasting a rather vine-laden metaphor for civilization sprouting from chaotic seas. People love their metaphors like they love selfies, an opportunity to reflect and sometimes overanalyze. Meanwhile, tendrils of ivy continue to weave an intricate tapestry through the sails and rigging, a tribute to nature's often unpredictable embrace. If you ever wondered what it would be like if Mother Nature had a sculptor's eye and a penchant for creative landscaping, here's your answer. Yes, vines on a pirate ship, a niche lifestyle choice for sure, the sort Instagram influencers might dream about if they had been around in ancient Greece. And get this, a tidbit you won't find in mainstream documentaries. For the ancient Greeks, ivy wasn't just a pretty face. Sacred to Dionysus, it was thought to ward off drunks when worn as a crown. That's right, an all-natural hangover preventative. As those pirates swashbuckle their way through life, one can't help but wonder if they understood the irony of their leafy confines. All the while, the disoriented pirates scratch their heads under the tangles of green and argue in whispered confusion. Is this a trick of the eye? An elaborate illusion? Their prowess at sea certainly didn't prepare them for the sharp, intoxicating scent of grapes carried on the breeze, a teaser for what's about to come. Dionysus, in a glimmer of celestial mischief, spares a glance at the soon-to-be befuddled crew. How surreal it must feel for them, suspended in a flurry of flora like actors plucked from a Mariam sitcom staged in a botanical garden. Somewhere, a poet jots this scene down, knowing generations will either marvel at or misinterpret it. In the end, the pirates' attempts to retake control of their ship fall humorously flat, as though reason met revelry and promptly decided to take a vacation. With each vine that unfurls its way closer to understanding, the surreal conversation continues. Were we outwitted by a mere mortal? Or did we cross paths with a deity in disguise? Whatever theories they concoct, none quite encapsulate the mythological masterpiece unfolding around them. So here you are, engulfed by the magical aftermath of Dionysus' ingenious response, a ship transformed into a verdant realm on the restless sea. And just when you think the drama's reached its peak, foreign wine-like ripples play across the ocean's surface, hinting at more mysteries to come. In the timeless dance between fate and free will, you've just witnessed an act worthy of applause, a spectacle that challenges all preconceived notions etched into mortal minds. You find yourself aboard a pirate vessel, a wooden leviathan creaking beneath your feet, its sails full and billowing as if the wind itself were sharing a secret laugh. The air smells of salt and adventure, mixed with a hint of trepidation as the pirates eye their captive. Dionysus, a mere youth in appearance, but with an aura that spoke of something ancient and uncontainable. The pirates, bless them, had no idea what they've bargained for. They grin and lean on the rails, counting imaginary gold and dreaming of the cider they'll convert their bounty into. As you watch, something extraordinary begins to happen. What appeared as a mere flicker in the corner of your eye starts spreading. A slow crawl at first, then a hurried unfurling. Vines, unmistakably green and impossibly vibrant, begin to erupt from between the wooden planks of the ship. Their growth is otherworldly. One moment they are fragile tendrils, and the next thick ropes of vegetation winding and nodding with the certainty of centuries. It's as if the ship itself is suddenly alive, participating in this unannounced metamorphosis. The pirates, meanwhile, shift from smug, self-congratulative smirks to stupor, their hands frozen mid-air as mugs are forgotten and eyes widen like saucers. Botanical trivia time. Did you know vines have been around for millions of years, with fossils dating back to the Jurassic period? You almost expect a tiny prehistoric insect to buzz out from the leaves. These vines creeping across the deck reflect that long, twisting history, yet with the radiance of a Mediterranean summer evening, shot through with the scent of wildflowers and earth after a fresh rain. These aren't your ordinary garden-variety vines, no sir. Each leaf glistens with a dew that seems to hold the fire of ambrosia itself, a liquid promise of delight and disarray. Dionysus's touch is visible everywhere, onus of chaos entwined with order, pushing the boundary of mere mortal comprehension. Historians still argue whether this was Dionysus's true nature or a lesson to those who would confine something as elemental as divinity. Nevertheless, here it is, undeniable and consuming. The textures of the foliage are so palpable, you can almost feel the robustness of the vines under your fingers. As each one expands, it makes the wood beneath it appear shabbier, desperately clinging to its own sense of identity. It's as if the ship itself is trying to decide between its old life as a vessel of roguery and its new identity as a floating garden. Not to mention, these vines aren't just twining around aimlessly. They are climbing the masts, wrapping around the rigging, blossoming in clusters that would put a florist to shame. People often forget how lushly Dionysus's influence can manifest. In myth and art, wines and vines symbolize his enduring lushness and vitality, reminders of civilization's wild, untamed roots. Through the greenery, there's a rustle, almost as if the foliage itself could whisper tales of ecstasy and recklessness, their leaves stirring with laughter. Somewhere on a mental shelf, you stow away this moment next to Cleopatra's favorite beauty hack, crocodile dung sunscreen. Similar magnitude of oddity, different direction of use. There, now entwined in emerald glory, pirate hubris meets green justice. You can't help but think, of all the possible voyage companions, Dionysus is adding an unexpected twist to bring your own greenery. The ship has turned into a verdant labyrinth where every path leads to wonder. Historians, and quite a few conjecture-loving passers-by, still debate whether this was an intentional act on Dionysus's part, or merely an uncontrollable expression of his nature. Was it a choice or an inevitability? Maybe it was the divine equivalent of a hiccup. In the heart of this growing green tableau, the pirates panic, stumbling over lush tendrils, trying to reclaim balance in a world literally shifting beneath them. You half expect a Peter Pan shadow triumphantly marching out from behind the sails, ready to spearhead a takeover. Instead, laughter, musical, mirthful, haunting, echoes from the greenery, teasing and omnipresent. Dionysus stands at the center, now undeniably divine, a sight to behold amidst this spontaneous Eden. His eyes glint mischievously, dictating a narrative only he fully understands. The foliage continues to intertwine, enwrapping the pirates, binding them not with malice, but with gentle firmness, turning their swashbuckling sanctuary into a verdant cradle. How's that for poetic justice? A pirate ship entangled by the very symbol of fertility and life they intended to exploit? Somewhere among the chaos, a flute begins to play, summoning the echoes of ancient Minoan ceremonies, when vines symbolized life reborn with each new season. The sound mingles with the enriched breath of nature, rhythmic and unending, like waves upon a shore. Thus, the unsanctioned symphony of Dionysus carries the day, as you cannot keep yourself from admiring the irony. The pirates, shackled by their audacity, now face their comeuppance under a canopy roof that promises a different kind of immortality, teaching them a newfound respect for the unknown, the uncontrolled. This whole transformation, this lush awakening aboard a grizzled ship, redefines what punishment might mean when served with a side of poetic flourish. So there you have it, Dionysus as horticulturist extraordinaire, using plants to plot twists for stubborn, loot-loving men. And maybe, just maybe, you've glimpsed a piece of the world's tangle of tales you didn't even know you needed to see. It's not every day you find yourself part of a moment capable of bridging the gap between historical fact and mythic fancy while keeping a keen eye on the creeping vines of inevitability. But today is definitely that day. And perhaps this journey, or transformation, isn't just for the pirates, but a gentle nudge toward your own revelations amidst the foliage of fantasies. The twinkle of distant stars shimmers over the Aegean as you wander, feeling the gentle sway of the ship beneath your feet and the sea breeze brushing against your skin. It's curious, then, that the salty air carries an unexpected aroma tonight, a floral sweetness reminiscent of grape harvests in peak summer. Beyond the horizon, where waves should be simply undulating with moonlit tranquility, something astonishing starts to unfold. You rub your eyes, but there's no mistake. The sea itself seems to ripple not just with water, but with deep, rich hues of burgundy and violet. Each wave rolls, glistening as if perfumed with the very essence of Dionysus himself, wine. It's a sight to behold. The pirates aboard thought they were clever, netting a man who appeared harmless. That youthful face and nonchalant demeanor didn't scream divine. But hey, they probably also thought Crocs were revolutionary footwear when sandals clearly did the job, right? Oh, the folly. Dionysus, the god of wine, in a grand display of perhaps the most delightful irony, enchants the sea itself, each surge transformed into an intoxicating blend, putting the Mediterranean to shame with his miraculous vintage. Historians still argue whether such feats were pure mythic hyperbole or tales rooted in the possibility of a divine winemaker. But can you really blame Dionysus for showing off his craftsmanship? I mean, if you've ever wielded a glue gun or a paintbrush, you know the joy of turning chaos into art. Now magnify that by a godly factor, his flair not merely to astound, but as a reminder to those audacious enough to question his divine heritage. The pirates, watching their surrounding world become an emboldened saga of reds and purples, are now grappling with a sobering reality. Their conquest isn't just any mortal spoils. The sea, once their ally, now transforms into something utterly alive and bewitching, a haven that's left them teetering on confusion and awe. A curious historical tidbit may arise here. Did you know the Greeks revered the ocean as both life-giver and destroyer, Poseidon's temperamental masterpiece? Now imagine a little Dionysian flavor added to its waves. Roaming the ship amidst scattered ropes and barrels, miraculously turned to amphoras, the pirates' reward sloshes around them, leaving no inch untamed by the grape-laden tides. Their prize has truly slipped through their fingers in the literal sense, as the hull teems with vineyards in full bloom, clinging eagerly to every surface. We've all stumbled upon similar moments, haven't we? Those misadventures that, while daunting at first, settle sweetly into memory. Remember that first rush of new wine sipped beneath a starlit sky? This, my dear wanderer, is the legend alive before you. As the ship heals with each motion, shock morphs to unnerving realization. No mundane sea surrounds these thieves, but a Dionysian landscape that befuddles both their greed and senses. The very weather seems to toast the occasion, with moonbeams dancing across this epic brew, casting a delirious glow that would rival even the finest Reddit Photoshop battles. Oh, the incandescent poetry of mortals fooled by their own misjudgments, a cosmic prank written across the night sky. This sensory spectacle you witness, however mesmerizing, remains multifaceted. As joyful as Dionysus' intriguing dance may seem, this too is a testament to his dual nature, a god embodying both jubilance and madness in equal measure. Later debates swirl about with scholars questioning the depth of this narrative. Was it sheer punishment, or perhaps a lesson in divine capriciousness? Alight now with the brilliance of wine-imbued waters, the pirates find themselves adrift not only physically but morally, challenged by an earthly temptation that confounds their plundering nature. And here's an essential fringe tidbit buried under layers of potentially fermented storytelling. Some whisper Dionysus' penchant for creatively dealing with foes could rival that of any Olympian's wrath. Soothing and stern all at once, like your grandma when she's telling you off while sneaking you cookies. Standing aboard this ethereal construct, you marvel as Dionysus dispenses justice in sacramental form, turning the world into a vineyard stretching vast and wide. Piracy's pursuit falters beneath this painted horizon of effervescence and enriched seafoam. Not merely putty in Dionysus's hands, the waves themselves become an opulent, swirling depiction of his essence, a lustrous force that enthralls even the sunken hearts of miscreants. The paradigm of earthly indulgence gets a mystical upgrade here under Aegean's starry theater, where myth frolics in its purest artistry, and in this vibrant canvas washed with grapes of plenty, imprinted with celestial wit and wine, you grasp an ephemeral glimpse of true divine revelry. A rhapsody echoing across time, where tonight even history clinks a glass in deference to the god amongst men. The phenomenal view leaves nothing unturned, delightfully tangled with echoes of Dionysus' power, drawing you ever deeper into his intoxicating tale. The ocean breeze tickles your skin as you lean over the ship's rail, a lively world of waves beneath you, swirling unnaturally red, almost like wine. Remember the sea's little Merlot moment? Anyway, a much more peculiar scene than the whims of altered water lies already in progress here. Before you stretches a fantastical sight, Dionysus, exuding an aura of calm mischief as vines spill from his hands, wrapping around the ship's mast and converting the deck into a floating vineyard. But look beyond the dense foliage, through the shivering green leaves, all life still hanging in a delicate balance. Our unlikely hero, the god of wine, watchers those who dared to snatch him, the pirates, now frozen in the grip of an impending transformation, uncertainty painting their frantic faces. It's quite a spectacle, really, as these sea-worn brigands flail rather dramatically, hands morphing subtly into curious flippers while their feet begin to meld together. Maybe one of them wishes they'd chosen an honest life of olive farming instead. After all, Dionysus was never the name to underestimate. As vines encroach further, the pirates' cries of alarm begin to warp into eerie choruses reminiscent of distant dolphin clicks. Seamless integration into the ocean's vast tapestry, you might say. For a moment, you might wonder why dolphins, of all creatures. Could it be Dionysus channeled a touch of poetry, selecting an intelligent and sociable form for these wayward souls? And here's the fun and frustrating fact nestled in historical lore. Within ancient Greek mythology, things rarely wore the colors of obvious justice. This whimsical bit of divine retribution has long fueled debate among scholars who ponder the ethical dimensions of punishment versus transformation. Historians still argue whether the view of his actions reflects injustice or divine jest, the perpetual glass half empty or half full question. Ever the trickster, Dionysus surely knew the paradox he created. Dolphins, symbols of play and freedom, yet also carriers of a legacy stamped with a reminder of human folly. It's like turning your annoying coworker into a hamster. Not entirely justified, perhaps, but undeniably creative. Through the cries that now mimic the high-pitched laughter of dolphins, a strand of humanity still lingers, the noise fading under the heavy oceanic air. Historical records even suggest that dolphins occasionally played a role in rescuing sailors from perils at sea. One wonders, did these particular cetaceans ever feel the compulsive need to nudge a drowning human toward safety, a lingering shade of their memories from ere when they'd walked as men? Or was that a wink from Dionysus offering redemption within punishment? The ship gracefully disappears, sinking below waves, a lush monument of Dionysus's creative flair swept into the ocean's depths. You might imagine it will become an underwater wonder, a playground for curious dolphins much like the ones it helped create. Yet, soft distractions aside, the transformation itself is an awe-inspiring and perhaps awkward moment frozen in time, like catching a glimpse of ancient wisdom within the comedic rhythm of divine mischief. As those pirates merge with the tides, the scene invites a Pythagorean hypothesis. Do they now comprehend mathematics beneath the waves? Or are they forever stuck doing flips, and not the algebraic kind, tails gliding majestically through the froth? But let's not get carried away. Historical musings can devolve into a bundle of tangled thoughts, much like those pirates' last memories now flitting through an expanded, water-bound consciousness. The ancient Greeks saw humor and tragedy in the same breath. Literally, ask any tragicomedian playwright. From the boundless joy of intoxication to the abyss of madness, was Dionysus himself not the embodiment of all life's dizzying extremes? So here we float, somewhere between laughter and wonder, the melancholy of mistakes swept under the sea. As you peer into the horizon, you come to understand that life is often as fluid and unpredictable as the whims of a god who makes dolphins out of men. A god who, in gifting them with a new form, whispers a riddle of redemption. Will they answer? You might wonder next time you hear distant clicks echoing across a sunlit cove, tiny quantum echoes of irony perhaps. You stand on the deck of a pirate ship possessed by Dionysus' potent magic. All around you, echoes of frantic braying from the newly transformed dolphins pierce the salty sea breeze, a cacophony blending with the gentle lapping of wine-turned waves. Amidst this enchanting chaos, Dionysus, in his infinite wisdom and arguably mischievous sense of justice, has turned your world upside down, or, more accurately, into a marine mammal sanctuary. Yet, in this moment of poetic justice, a singular contrast emerges. You're surprised to find that the chaos spares one young sailor, a testament to divine whimsy. Indeed, this mariner, let's call him Theo, stands bewildered and still human amongst a pod of very confused ex-pirates, now learning the art of synchronized swimming. You wonder if they missed their sea legs or if they're eager to embrace flipper fashion. Theo, unlike his former crewmates, had, in his heart, or perhaps at least in a fleeting thought during a less murderous day, recognized something divine in Dionysus. Maybe it was the god's unmistakable air of mythical casual Friday vibes, or his effortless knack for turning water into wanton debauchery. Regardless, it's a recognition that now grants Theo not only survival but a fresh chapter in life. A captainless ship and a peculiar frigate-sized vineyard to tend or abandon. And there Dionysus stands. How gods do it, you can only guess, offering a shimmering gaze of understanding towards Theo, with a touch of divine compassion. The god was not known solely for wrath. To the contrary, Dionysus, dear to festivals, is equally at home among tales of forgiveness. It invites a deeper exploration, this act of sparing Theo. You might think Dionysus's mercy here is merely a tale fit for oral traditions that fancied embellishment. But its roots are deep in the Greek ethos, complex as any Olympian family drama. Mercy as a theme winds through stories contemporary to Dionysus's time, reflecting ideas penned by philosophers and playwrights alike. One may even ponder echoes of this sentiment in ancient Roman notions that later embodied clemency as a political virtue. Historians still argue whether these cultural exchanges influenced each other more than a mythological wine enthusiast at a tasting menu. Really, who can refuse another pour of nuanced narrative? And of course, the historians do their bit of dancing around uncertainties, nudging at whether Theo's sparing carries more than mere storytelling flair. Was it perhaps a divine commentary on potential? Did Dionysus see in Theo a latent ability for redemption? Or was it simply a whimsical sop to the narrative necessity of preserving some living witness to his might? Since tales tend to circulate more effectively when at least one person can pronounce, "No, really, he turned the sea to wine." While the ship dips and bobs among vinous waves, the riddles of mercy and morality weave and unpack like an endless scroll of papyrus. What compels a god of revelry to offer pardon? It's a subject worthy of Socratic banter, or at least a podcast series deep dive. In allowing Theo's ship of fate to change its course, Dionysus dials back the underlying chaos just enough to measure compassion against consequence, an appropriate balance of freedom and mercy. Certainly fascinating to those future playwrights who conjured the dramatic catharsis on Greek stages. Indeed, history leaves just enough nuance to tickle our interpretative fancy, a quirky tidbit to toss into the discussion. It is said that playful dolphins have, in the annals of time, assisted sailors or frolicked alongside ancient ships, suggesting perhaps that Dionysus was not without his reasons or prophetic inklings in choosing this particular new identity for the pirates. With the bravado of a deity who's just turned your worst enemies into high-jumping sea creatures, Dionysus grins and leaves behind silent sermons on divine redemption. The god makes his silent exit, perhaps to another mythical happening, leaving Theo with the curious aftermath. A man among dolphins, remember, set against a sun-drenched sea, swirling with enchanted grape essence. A scene only this eclectic stretch of mythology could paint. And as you try figuring out which prophetic nugget Dionysus hid personally for you amid the remaining chaos, a thought swirls up that maybe, just maybe, in all these stories, whether they be filled with grand chaos or subtle kindness, the real lesson might be how one navigates after such divine events. Theo, now blessed or burdened with knowledge and freedom, casts his eyes over endless horizons. He too becomes part of a narrative tucked into the niche of legends, a minor chapter in the saga of Dionysus, a small act of mercy rippling like those very wine-driven waves beneath his still human feet. Remember this moment as the sun dips below the horizon, its light refracting into colors redolent of festival garb and grape harvests. You find yourself musing over the idea that legends rarely end at the last page written. They brew and ferment, much like a fine wine or, as some would wager, much like simply being aboard Dionysus's transformed vessel, afloat in a sea of potential stories. Who knows, perhaps Theo did set foot on dry land, ever extolling the merits of piscatorial friendship, forever the envied raconteur at every harvest feast thereafter. In the aftermath of sea-bound adventures and remarkable transformations, the world finds itself captivated by a vibrant energy. You step into a scene buzzing with anticipation, where the air is thick with the aroma of grape must and laughter echoes like a chorus of merry nymphs. Here, the festivals unfold like an artist's dream, each one a riot of colors, sounds, and sensations. These are no ordinary celebrations. They are born from the legendary tales of Dionysus, from his dalliance with both chaos and compassion. Imagine, if you will, a grand plaza lit by 1,000 tiny flames, swaying gently in the evening breeze like sleeping fireflies. As you wander through the throng of masquerading revelers, you can almost taste the mischief in the air. Dionysus, with his affinity for the unpredictable, chose this form of celebration to both bewilder and unite, merging the ordinary with the extraordinary. It's said that festivals in his honor became the original flash mobs, except, rather than random dance numbers, there were spontaneous grape stomps and impromptu theater performances. Some historians still argue whether these events were the earliest forms of improvisational art or plain Dionysian spontaneity. As you merge with the crowd, you're enveloped by the sound of flutes and drums that quicken your heartbeat, pulling you deeper into the ecstatic throng. There's a refreshing simplicity in the madness, the kind that can only be achieved when one decides to embrace the moment with abandon. Revelry, in the Dionysian sense, wasn't just about fun. It was an act of both transformation and reconciliation. Here, strangers become friends, masked identities vanish, and the social constructs of the outside world melt like wax figures under the scorching Greek sun. Look to your left. There's a boisterous debate on whether a crater overflowing with wine symbolizes excess or abundance. The transformation of souls within these celebrations mirrored that of Dionysus's infamous tale with the pirates, showing how an unexpected twist could become the turning point. Indeed, Dionysus's festivals were the original team-building exercises, albeit with less trust-falling and more trust-frolicking. You can hear whispers that echo tales of Orpheus, another legendary figure known for his tragic attempt to retrieve his beloved Eurydice from the underworld. Imagine if Dionysian revels allowed such crossover events. The chaotic beauty of these moments finds its pinnacle in the grand procession, a tumultuous yet harmonious spectacle. Here, leaders and laymen alike don disguises, taking on new personas as a tribute to the god of metamorphosis. Suddenly, a figure clad in a leopard skin breezes past you, a nod to Dionysus's often depicted attire. Is it an actor? A devoted follower? Or could it be Dionysus himself, slipping into the crowd incognito to partake in the festivities he's inspired? After all, mystery is part of his allure. Nearby, a cluster of philosophers, perhaps the unexpected guests at this party, are locked in animated debate. Among their varied opinions, they try to decipher the true meaning of Dionysus's dual identity. Is he the liberator or the destroyer? Does he symbolize chaos or creation? Fringe theories bounce around like confetti, suggesting that these festivals were attempts at synchronizing human rhythms with the natural chaos of life, embracing both the vine's sweetness and its unpredictable growth. And just when you think the oddity of this gathering has reached its zenith, behold a mock trial, staged for entertainment, and perhaps a lesson or two, where legendary misunderstandings are humorously dissected. Remember the time when that same table you're standing by decided to help 3 of your merry companions discover shoes were meant for your feet, not hats? Much like these Dionysian revels, sometimes a little unpredictability is precisely what's needed to restore balance, to not take life too seriously. Despite the frenzy, a sense of reconciliation threads through the chaos, offering guests moments that connect them to their own lives. A sprightly woman next to you gleefully recounts how generations before celebrated the awakening of spring with similar fervor in regions as far-flung as Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians sang hymns to their own gods of fertility and reinvigoration. Ah, the unifying power of a good festival, and maybe a bit of wine. As you take it all in, this exuberant mass of humanity weaving stories over laughter and libations, the essence of Dionysian festivals reveals itself. Life's complexities condensed into moments of uninhibited joy and unity. For a brief while, the world outside loses its hold on you, and no problem exists that a little merriment cannot soften. One might say, inspired by the god himself, these events fashioned a safe haven to embrace both joy and transformation, blurring the lines between the mundane and the magical. So, revel on, sweet celebrant. Bask in the unhurried reverence of spontaneity that only the shadow of Dionysus provides. Here, within this jubilant pandemonium, let your heart skip to the beat of ancient flutes and find solace in the understanding that amid life's chaotic dance, beauty often reveals its truest form. And as you wander back into the afterglow, remember those heated debates on hydria and crater multipurpose utility. Who says ancient wisdom can't emerge from a spirited discussion over a fine vintage? As you delve deeper into the mysteries shrouded in vine leaves and the faint drizzle of crushed grapes, you're venturing into the heart of the enigmatic Dionysian mysteries. Imagine yourself in ancient Greece, amid flickering torchlight and the soft hum of cicadas, a secretive society where the spirituality of the god of wine promised a profound transformation. Historians still argue whether these rites were as wild and ecstatic as the myths suggest, or more subdued and contemplative. Peut-être both, given that human nature tends to vacillate between quiet reflection and a tendency to dance badly at weddings after the third glass of something a little too strong. Picture yourself as a participant, perhaps masked, entering this ancient world where every bloomed vine is a doorway to enlightenment. To Egyptians, life after death was as clear as a day at the Nile. A pharaoh's roadmap to immortality etched in stone. Ditto for the Dionysian initiate, for whom the rites whispered secrets about the soul's rebirth amid grape clusters. Historical accounts suggest the mysteries were held in secluded locations, mountains in Thebes or secretive caves perhaps, where initiates experienced a form of symbolic death and rebirth. A bit like graduating college, only swap out the cap and gown for ivy wreaths and ceremonial chants. In the Dionysian context, transformation was not just spectacle, but a substance. The frenetic whirl of dances, sometimes veering into manic ecstasy, served a higher purpose, melding the participants with the divine essence of Dionysus himself. Even today, one could argue a parallel with how modern festivals have remnants of these electrifying experiences. A crowd lost in music can be a contemporary echo of ancient rites. The rituals of the Dionysian mysteries are cloaked in a veil of secrecy, an achievement considering ancient texts were the social media of their time, complete with gossip, one-upmanship, and the occasional philosophical deep dive. But what little has trickled down through history paints a vivid picture. Participants were thought to ingest potent potables or dance through the night, challenging the boundaries between the mundane and the divine until such lines blurred completely. Ah, the allure of a well-timed blurred line. Unlike tax codes or IKEA assembly instructions, this was humanity's ambit towards the sacred. A quirky tidbit: among the lesser-known aspects of Dionysian worship were the thyrsi, staffs made of giant fennel stalks bound with ivy topped with a pine cone, a sort of multi-purpose tool-cum symbol of fertility and immortality. Take that, Swiss Army knife. Initiates would wield their thyrsi during the rites, perhaps as a tactile reminder of their unity with nature's cyclical regeneration, or possibly just to keep their rhythm during the dance. History isn't exactly flooding us with specifics here. There's ongoing debate among scholars about the nature of these potent experiences. Were they spiritual awakenings or just, enthusiastic wine tastings under the stars? Some suggest that the Dionysian mysteries functioned as a counterpoint to the overly rational, patriarchal norms of the time, a subversive space where chaos was not feared, but embraced as enlightenment's precursor. This chaos didn't always manifest through frenzied movement. Sometimes, the most profound transformations quietly unfurled amidst whispered prayers and reflective silences. Remember that crocodile-dung sunscreen from Egypt? Ancient beauty rituals truly were a feat of human creativity. Interestingly, the rawness and abandon in Dionysian rituals echoed that same spirit of innovation, channeling the undomesticated forces of the universe, if not to protect, then to transform. Imagine the heady scent of sweet-smelling herbs mingling with the earthly aroma of trampled grapes, an ambiance electric enough to make even the most closely guarded skeptic wonder. On a more mainstream note, some historians suggest that the introduction of Dionysian rites helped shift Greek culture's focus, amplifying the appreciation of theater and dramatic arts. The comedy and tragedy masks you're probably familiar with, allegedly inspired by stories of Dionysus and his cohort, underscoring emotion's inherent duality. These performances, which often mirrored the transformational experiences of the mysteries themselves, left bronze imprints in history, less tarnished than actual bronze, which, fun fact, has a tendency to develop that charming patina over time. So there you have it. Rather like that epic party to which everyone wishes they were invited, the Dionysian mysteries wrap themselves around your imagination. A fusion of revelry and reflection, a compelling promise of transformative joy tinged with the madness of divine insight. Allow your mind, then, to wander through these lush rites, perhaps dipping into the mingled wisdom and chaos of an ancient world, yet not so different from our own. And don't worry, you're not alone if you're lost pondering whether these rites produced more divine encounters or just a surge of particularly vivid vino-induced enthusiasm. As history whispers its secrets to you, which it does so tantalizingly, you realize the allure of the Dionysian mysteries endures, the stories retaining that beguiling power to make you see the world anew, much like that one perfect golden glow sunset or a day when your coffee actually wakes you up on the first sip. Now that's divine intervention we can all get behind. As you reflect on the mythic tapestries spun from Dionysus's many glorious and at times chaotic adventures, you begin to unravel how these stories profoundly highlight the delicate balance between joy and madness, freedom and consequence. Dionysus, like a skillful ballroom dancer, twirls with precision between the light and dark, leaving a trail of delight and chaos in his wake. It is almost as if he's beckoning you to join his cosmic waltz, albeit at your own peril, or pleasure, depending on which foot you lead with. In the lush vineyards of human consciousness, Dionysus plants the vines of ecstasy and euphoria, the undeniable allure of joy. After all, who could resist the temptation of losing oneself in the sweet, heady indulgence of fermented grape juice? Wine, according to historical sources, was not merely a beverage in ancient Greece, but a social elixir, fostering community and indulgence. You can almost picture the ancient symposiums where philosophers pontificated over goblets, possibly wondering how many spirits their cup could hold before it overflowed into madness. On the other hand, it is imperative to note that Dionysus's joy comes with a heady rival in madness. The very ecstasy that lifts you into the heavens threatens to drop you back into the underworld when its edge turns sharp. Dionysus, as myth would have it, doesn't provide a guidebook on how to find equilibrium between rapture and frenzy. Historians argue whether the chaos Dionysus brought forth was a necessary counterpart to the joy he championed, or merely the shadow side of unchecked indulgence. Perhaps it was both. But consider this. Through his myths, Dionysus offers a reminder that absolute freedom can unleash absolute consequences. You might think of ancient cults, loosely akin to rock concerts, minus the overpriced merchandise, where his followers, driven by sheer liberation, abandoned societal norms in favor of primal expression. It's almost like a toga party where everyone forgets to leave their togas on. This ritualistic dissolution of order speaks volumes about mankind's eternal desire to break free from the mundane. However, with every indulgence comes reckoning. It's not unlike that third slice of cheesecake late at night. Satisfying at first, though it comes with its own form of punishment the next day. In a similar vein, Dionysus's myths aren't just about bacchanalian bliss. They serve as parables of transformation, often through trial by intoxication or madness. Much like the fateful pirates who transformed into dolphins, let's admit, not exactly their best career choice, there are lessons to be learned about change, even when the method seems like nature's joke about evolution. From ancient times, dolphins have curiously been regarded as saviors of humankind at sea, perhaps a nod to their unlikely origin story woven through Dionysian legend. Historians still debate whether this tale was a moral warning or just an ancient form of tabloid entertainment, with a side of mythic grandeur. Yet, beyond the lore, there's an ironic twist where human nature persistently seeks Dionysus's gifts despite knowing the risks. The chronicler of chaotic bliss and unexpected consequence, the expert salesman of unshackled joy and master purveyor of madness. It appears that despite cautionary tales and potential pitfalls, the call of Dionysus echoes in every indulgent festival. Each moment of reckless freedom seized from the jaws of mundane life. Did you know many historians suggest that these myths of joy and madness might have offered a psychosocial release valve, a way for ancient Greeks to explore and contain the fear of their own uncontrollable spontaneity? Picture Freud with a laurel wreath, perhaps the workings of a collective Greek subconscious. Alternatively, consider the joyous masks of the Greek theater, not just costumes, but symbolic explorations of human duality. The Dionysian legacy, therefore, isn't just a collection of antiquated stories. It is a mirror reflecting our continuous dance with the underlying chaos within us. As afros and sneakers clashed with togas and sandals, these myths hold a timeless allure, inviting every soul to find their boundary between jovial self-discovery and the precipice of uncontrolled excess. Dionysus had the power to reveal the extremes of human nature, encouraging an exploration seldom allowed in structured society. As you reflect on these insights, you begin to see the silhouette of the joyous madness Dionysus represents, a reminder that within every moment of joy lies the potential for chaos. It's much like reaching for that third glass of Pinot Noir during a quiet evening at home, knowing full well the line you're about to cross. Just remember, with great wine comes great responsibility, or at the very least, an enormous headache. And so, from his lofty position, Dionysus watches over the dance floor of humanity, where each twirl and step lies in the hands of the dancer, ever teetering between the intoxicating allure of joy and the potential chaos just a stumble away. In this historical and mythic kaleidoscope, the dual nature of life becomes vividly illustrated, telling us more about the shades of our own existence, leaving you to ponder where you might draw the line in your own dance with the divine. As you drift through the ether of myth and time, Dionysus's narrative flows like a serene stream, guiding you to surrender to the embrace of sleep. You lie back, comforted by the wispy tendrils of his presence, as if lulled by the gentle hum of a chorus extolling the very wine that once incited joy and madness. Imagine the fabric of reality gently shifting around you, whispering kindly of distant revelries where laughter stirred the very stars above. Picture yourself reclining upon a lush bed of ivy, each leaf a memory from Dionysus's tapestry of tales, and you can't help but chuckle softly, considering how the god of unrestrained chaos is now manifesting as a rather effective bedtime bard. Your senses are flooded by the muted scents of ripe grapes and aged oak, the air thick with the promise of restorative dreams. Science tells us the experience of scent can usher deeper relaxation, though historians still argue whether Dionysus himself scented his vineyards with such care, or let chaos sow the seeds. As your eyes close, heavy now with the decadence of the moment, the echoes of ancient festivals form a lullaby, a rhythm so old it seems embedded within the earth itself. Cultural tidbits weave in your mind like tapestry, the very first wine toast to honor shared joy, reflective of Dionysian gratitude. And remember those eccentric footnotes of history, like how gladiatorial spectacles in Rome included group naps, Someone should have informed them that Dionysus might have preferred a pillow to a trident. The journey you've embarked upon with Dionysus fades gradually, like the trailing notes of a lullingly distant lyre, as you sink further into the sanctuary of sleep's solace. Imagine lush fields underfoot, transforming seamlessly into soft meadows of cloud, cradling you with their promise of slumber, as if the earth itself relented to the coaxing hand of night, drawing you deeper. Feel your breath become a tide, a gentle surf washing upon the shores of your awareness, each inhalation and exhalation revealing a canvas of peace painted by the divine artist you now dream of. Even once whispered by the ancients, tales of Dionysus were always rich with layers, festive frolics tempered by wisdom's echo. The stories, woven snugly with humanity's need for catharsis and reflection, now lull you further, bringing the gift of quietude and the promise of dawn's renewal. Humanity's lasting desire to immortalize their gods as both chaos and comfort becomes a cradle of warm understanding beneath you. You draw in another breath, softer now, as feather-light as those glorious mythical garlands worn by the followers of Dionysus during moonlit revelries. Lulled by gentle images of nymphs dancing with abandon, the vibrant hues of celebration softly dim, their energy shifted into restful surrender. You exist here, embraced by the harmony of it all, a testament to the enduring power of stories to soothe, enrich, and restore. Rest comes like a lover, patient and devoted, as Dionysus's tale softly folds into the silence of infinite dreams. And as the narrative shifts into a gentle nothingness, Dionysus's playful smile lingers in the corners of consciousness. The god of wine and ecstasy, with all his raucous endeavors and quiet wisdom, watches over your retreat into the ephemeral night, as if to suggest the world's chaos will still be right here for you come morning. His presence assures there is freedom in letting go, in succumbing to sleep's inviting call until you awaken once more. Your eyelids flutter upon a horizon of dusk, where thoughts dissolve into whispered secrets between the universe and the echoes of ancient laughter, a quiet pact that guarantees a serene voyage until the dawn stretches softly across your rejuvenated mind. Now as you rest, allow this peaceful serenity to continue as a gentle tide, cradling you within the harmonious hush of midnight's embrace, Dionysus softly guiding you, slipping into the folds of dreams. In the shadows of myth and reality, breathe deep beneath the watchful gaze of the stars. Exhale all tension, letting your body unfurl, weighted by comfort, as though Dionysus himself has placed the gentlest of wreaths upon your brow, rooting you safely in the land of dreams. The world, with its demands and daylit distractions, fades, leaving you to discover the divine slumber only Dionysus could conjure. You, with your thoughts tenderly untangling in the weave of night, blessed by the god whose tale of joy and madness sings sweetly of slumber. As whispers of Dionysus's myth finally dissolve, let them fall away, stepping back quietly until you're alone, adrift in tranquility's embrace until morning's light.